Welcome to The Read Along,
a mini book club for your ears.
I'm your host, Scott.
I'm your other host, Anita.
And join us on a journey through a good book,
one chapter at a time.
Do you like talking about movies? Do you like talking about mediocre movies? Do you like talking about how you could have fixed mediocre movies? Well, I certainly do, and you can listen to me, Scott C. Bourgeois, along with my co-hosts Greg Beaver and Liam Creswick, as we give our notes, and I have some notes. You can follow it now on your podcatcher of choice, or support it by visiting patreon.com/IHaveSomeNotes. Bit of a rainy day. Both kids are home.
Yeah.
I'm very sore from a weekend where I went on a 15-kilometer bike hike with a bunch of Cub Scouts.
And Scott's training for that 15-kilometer bike ride was not at all.
Yeah, it was not.
It was
having
not at all prepared.
Ridden my bike in 20 years, which, to be fair, I got tuned up, and it served me well over the course of the ride.
The bike was in fine shape.
I made it all 15 kilometers, and I did okay. I was very exhausted after, and I'm a little sore.
And you're so sore today. You've been complaining since you got home about how sore you are.
Well, that's because I am not in biking shape. Which, if anything, just tells me I should ride my bike more often.
Agreed.
Probably.
Well, the weather has finally turned nice. You can.
It's true. And our kids both like to go out and roll around on their wheels.
Yeah.
From time to time.
Yeah. To a certain extent. We don't do, like, lengthy treks or anything, but
no.
What is to be expected when one of your kids is, riding the big wheel?
Yes. She can ride the smaller bike.
Yeah. She doesn't like to. She likes to ride the little big wheel. The little big wheel. Anyway.
Yes.
We should talk about book things.
Sure. This might be a longer episode because this was quite a heavy chapter.
Doozy of a chapter. It's going to be great.
So we should get right into it. We'll start with a brief recap of our previous chapter, chapter 16, in which Dani, the day after Beverly's attack in the gallery, gathers the crew, and they come up with kind of the broad strokes of what their plan is going to be for heisting this portrait on the day of the auction. And as Rabbit and Mia leave, Dani asks Elliot to hang back so that he can do a favor for her. A couple favors, actually, which he is doing as we make our way into Chapter 17 of The Frame-Up by Gwenda Bond. The first more heist-related favor that Elliot is doing is taking her to meet the evil twins.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he warns her, like, this is a waste of time.
This is a thing that happens.
At best, this is a courtesy call. And at worst...
At worst, it's issuing a challenge.
Well, yeah, we're poking the hornet's nest because these two are chaotic. They have their own agenda, and they're not going to play well with us. And Dani's like, well, there's no harm in trying. Because, I mean, in fairness, if you don't ask, the answer is always no, right?
Yeah, and fair enough. But even still, given the tone of the front of this chapter, the odds were not good. Yeah.
They head to kind of a rundown part of town, literally the wrong side of the tracks, as Elliot points out.
Yeah.
And they make it to this, like, ramshackle little, like, walk-up apartment building with a broken elevator.
And, like, rickety stairs.
Yeah.
And, like,
And they go to a first-floor apartment, and the evil twins were expecting Elliot to be there. Like, he had called ahead to say he was coming for a visit. They were not expecting Dani and Sunflower to be there. And are a little surprised and like, oh, I didn't know we were hanging out with snitches now. Not their exact words, but...
pretty close.
Yeah.
Pretty close.
They invite the two in and are like, so what's up? What's the deal? Why are you visiting us? And Dani's basically like, look, as a professional courtesy, we know that you're after the same score as us. We're better equipped and in a better position to take care of it, and we're absolutely going to steal it. So we're just saying, why don't you cut your losses now? And Elliot specifically is like, and I'll owe you one in the future. Like, open-ended favor.
Which is a really big deal, apparently, from Elliot.
Well, in general, in their society, apparently, that's a pretty big deal. Dani equates it to, like, a blank check.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, yes, we know that favors are the currency of this magical art thieving world, right? But to get just a favor with no other specifics from Elliot, who I get the impression doesn't hand them out all that often, they made it seem like a really big deal.
Yeah. The twins make a show of considering it, but it's just that. It's a show.
Yeah.
They rattle Dani on purpose by, like, doing their audio-visual magic.
Yeah, making her think that Sunflower has attacked one of their cats.
Yeah. And then basically are like, I guess it's may the best thief win, so be on your way. And Dani's like, sigh, well, that was a waste of time. And Elliot's like, I don't want to say I told you so.
Yeah. It wasn't an entire waste of time?
No, because we do get one interesting kernel of information here.
Well, one interesting kernel and one confirmation of fact. So,
what's the confirmation of fact first?
We know for sure that the twins are going to be there.
Yeah, and they are looking for Archer's painting.
Yes.
But this is where the interesting kernel of information comes from.
Yes.
The twins' dad
Yeah.
or grandfather, unclear, they just call him their beloved papa.
Yeah, they just said pop.
Was the owner of the painting that Hackworth gambled it away from.
Yes. So at one point, they had possession of Archer's portrait.
Yeah. Or at least their family did.
Yes.
And they seem to be under the impression that that gives them a much more, let's call it, solid claim on the painting as opposed to Dani and her crew. Even though Dani and her crew are actually working for Archer, who's in the painting, in more ways than one we'll learn later in this chapter.
Yes.
And also, it turns out that Dani might have a stronger claim to ownership of that painting for other reasons we'll find out in this chapter.
Well, it's something won in a gambling game. Like, Hackworth won it fair and square, right?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily assume that Hackworth, everything we know about him, won it fair and square.
Okay,
He
fair
definitely
point.
won it. I don't know that he necessarily did it fairly.
Fair and square. Oh, okay. I will concede. Touche. You got me there. We don't know if that was fair and square.
Yeah, there's even a little moment in this very chapter when Brad calls to ask Elliot and Dani to come in, which we're getting a little ahead of ourselves because this happens partway through the chapter, where he relates Beverly talking about how she's too stubborn to have died.
Oh, yeah.
And that caused some bickering amongst the other ex-wives.
Of course it did.
Which led to, well, if stubbornness not to die was a measure of people living forever, then certainly William Hackworth would still be alive today.
And they were all like, yes. Yeah. It was a funny bit. And one more little detail that I noticed that may or may not come into play later. Sunflower did not react to the illusion.
Yeah, in fact, seemed completely oblivious to it.
So I wonder if it means that, like, she didn't see it.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case.
Like, if their illusions don't work on animals, maybe?
It's very possible their illusions only work on people, and that might give them a way around their illusions if Sunflower is immune to them.
Right?
Yeah.
A thought I had, a thing I noticed.
Good catch, and one I hadn't caught.
It might be nothing, it might be something. I don't know.
So leaving the evil twins' apartment, the two of them begin going on the other more personal favor that Dani has asked of Elliot, and that is exactly what we assumed last chapter. She has him basically pinging at banks to see if they're at the bank with the safety deposit box. Because he has the key, so he knows what he's looking for.
Right.
And they stop at a first bank, nothing. They stop at a second bank, and the switch flips. And he's like, this is the one. I'll go in and get it because I don't want you to make another scene with the receptionist. And Dani's a little embarrassed. She's like, oh, you heard about that? And he's like, yeah, everyone's heard about that.
It was in the paper.
Yeah, word got around.
We know.
He goes in, and Dani frets for a little bit. And then, sure enough, he comes out with the contents of the safety deposit box.
Yeah, this small cloth-wrapped package.
It's a book.
It's a book.
There's a book inside.
Yep.
And Dani is like heart pounding, snatches it away from him, and is like, you're driving, and has him take her back home. Now, this is the point where Brad has called and asked for someone to come in. There's something going on. He's had a terrible night's sleep with all the events from the other day. He needs one of his security people there. And Elliot's like, you know what? I got this. I'll go in and take care of it because obviously you need a minute with whatever was in that safety deposit box.
Yeah.
So he drops her off at home and borrows her car to go and head back to the fortress.
I'm sure is fine.
Yeah.
So a couple things I want to note before we get into the last half of this chapter, which is like the real meaty part. So the conversation in the car between Dani and Elliot was just a lovely little character beat for the two of them,
Mm-hmm.
I thought. Again, just giving us little itty bitty bits more insight into their characters, specifically into Dani.
Well, because we're in her head. So.
Yeah, right? And, like, the events leading her to this whole to-do and how Elliot may or may not still feel about her. But I feel like we're being blocked from learning more about Elliot by Dani's, like...
Laser focus on what's going on in front of her right now?
Yeah, and her, like, confused feelings about Elliot getting in the way.
And she definitely has those, yeah.
Right? It was nice to get a little bit more of that.
Yeah, because one of the things she also talks about, just kind of in relation to that, is her motivation for running her cons for many years and not doing any more forgeries. And I don't think she would have necessarily recognized this at the time, but with hindsight now, she kind of frames it as like penance for having betrayed the crew. She couldn't bring herself to use the tools she was using with the crew to make money.
Yeah.
She found her own new thing.
Right?
Yeah.
And having learned a little more on the history of what they do and why,
Yeah.
she was kind of
Conflicted
and kind of guilty about that.
Because the history of art theft is not all just Robin Hood.
It's really not.
And it turns out that a lot of bad stuff was going on too, and that was kind of kept from her by her mother. And so she does kind of feel a little gross about it.
Yeah. And she admits that she takes down, in her words, a certain level of douchebaggery.
Yes.
Right? And then ends up splitting her take with the person that they were trying to hurt.
Yeah.
Which is a very charitable thing to do, which is very frowned upon from the world that she's in. And she's so guarded about it to the point of being ashamed of it. But
Elliot isn't judgy about
that's
it.
what I mean. I'm willing to bet that he is, like, endeared by it.
He comes across as a little endeared by it because at the end of the day, Dani is a thief with a heart of gold.
Yeah.
She's tried to harden herself, but she hasn't necessarily succeeded. And Elliot clearly respects that. And that might be one of the reasons why he was attracted to her in the first place 10 years ago.
Yes. One other thing that stood out as one of those little details that makes me think that someone else knows what's up. When Brad is on the phone with Dani while Elliot's in the bank, he calls it an attack. He calls it an attack. What happened to Beverly? He calls it an attack.
Yeah. Now, there's one way to read that, which is that she had an attack. She had some sort of...
An anxiety attack, a panic attack.
Yeah, exactly.
A mental attack.
But there's definitely a second way to read that maybe he knows more than he's letting on now that we know what's going on with the painting.
Right?
Or at least know more about what's going on with the painting.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he hasn't been fully forthcoming, so...
No. But the slip up of calling Elliot instead of Emmett, his cover name, Brad calling it an attack, potentially knowing what it was.
Yeah, the Hackworths definitely know more about what's going on than they're letting on.
Right?
For sure.
They are saying.
They are definitely another faction at play here.
I'm just saying.
This chapter should maybe have been 2 chapters. We both kind of agreed on that after
I agree, because there seems like a break between the story as it's unfolding and then this book
This
that...
flashback, essentially.
Yeah.
And the chapter's quite a long one because of that, number one. And number two, there is this kind of abrupt break between what's going on in the present and this vignette about something that happened generations ago.
Yeah.
Back in 1895.
So this book that was wrapped up in that safety deposit box is a combination book of secrets and journal.
Yes.
From someone we assume to be Dani's ancestor.
Great-grandmother, maybe.
Possibly great-great, depending on how you count it.
Hard to pinpoint exactly how far back. But she definitely is a Poisson.
Yes.
She went by Maeve Poisson, though it's implied that that is a slightly assumed name, because she was trying to distance herself from a scandalous event that took place back home.
Yes,
when
with her family.
When she moved to Paris.
Yes.
Which was that she was, shall we say, non-consensually impregnated by one of her father's business associates.
Gross.
Mr. B.
Super gross.
Yeah.
I hate it. It's awful.
And then got revenge on him by painting him into a painting.
Yes.
So Maeve is magic. There's certainly an implied bloodline thing going on here where it maybe passes down generation to generation.
And I'm under the impression that it's like through a maternal line.
Could be.
Based on how she talks about her mother versus how she talks about her father.
Yes, and Maeve, as well, has a daughter. She knows that the child she gave birth to out of this incident was a girl who was left behind to be raised by her mother.
Yes.
Again, to kind of put some distance, and put some distance from the scandal.
Yes.
But she did get her revenge because she was painting Mr. B's portrait, and she accidentally cut herself and mixed the blood in with the paint, not intentionally fully, but in doing so, it activated her magic, and she trapped him in the painting. He was physically transported into the painting where he is trapped.
Yeah.
He disappeared from the earth after that, and everyone was like, I guess he's dead. But she knows exactly where he is.
She put him in a painting.
She put him in a painting, and that is where he remains. Just to kind of like run through the series of events, she makes some friends attending a new kind of art college, an avant-garde art college in Paris.
Yes.
Where she can further refine her skills. She meets some like-minded girls, and they fall into the orbit of a mysterious Mr. Archer, who is this guy who's kind of like hovering around the art scene, seems to be cultivating some people, a little predatory, and is clearly kind of fixated on her because she appears to be immune to his charms. And eventually it is revealed that he is, in fact, a demon.
Yeah, he admits it to her outright.
Straight up tells her, I'm not a wizard, I'm a demon. And the powers that you've seen me demonstrate are demon powers. He does indeed have a suite of powers that very much reads like the Lesser Key of Solomon style demons. Like he has this weird assortment of abilities that he can enact on people, one of which is he can assault people with whispers.
Yeah. To speak to them inside their minds, which he does to one of her friends.
Who displeases him, and she ultimately dies from it.
Yeah.
And
great.
he can also, like, impart people with the ability to, like, make good business decisions and stuff. He can help them get money.
Yeah, he promises, like, fortune and wealth.
And he promises her specifically, like, you're clearly special, and if you side with me, if you come with me and we do some business, we could set ourselves up. We could set ourselves up good. Maeve ultimately kind of decides to play along with Archer, but makes up her mind at this time that she's going to do to him what she did to Mr. B.
Yes.
She's going to paint his portrait. So now we know where the portrait came from.
Yep.
It came from Dani's ancestor.
Yep.
We know what's up with Archer. He's at least partially trapped in the portrait.
Yes.
Now, my guess is that because he's not human, because he's a demon, the magic didn't fully take. Part of him is trapped in the painting, but part of him is still free. Or he's powerful enough that he can leave the painting from time to time.
That also tracks. That's what I thought as well, is that either the painting is unfinished, and so he is not entirely in it, or because he is a demon, like, it's just not strong enough to hold him.
To completely
hold him. Yeah.
So,
okay.
That's what's up. And that's also why it's very possible Dani has a stronger claim to ownership of that painting than the twins.
Yeah. Now, I can't help but wonder if Archer knows what's happened, like in this past, in this 100 years ago book, if Archer knows what he's getting into or not.
Well, he knows that she's magic, but that doesn't necessarily mean he knows what her power was.
Yeah, but is he such a poor judge of character to not notice that he does notice that his charms don't work on Maeve, right?
Well, his magic charms
don't work on her. But he hasn't assessed that she is not interested in men, and that not only is she not interested in men, she, like, actively despises them because of, like, this recent assault.
I mean, he might make the argument I'm not a man, technically speaking.
I suppose, but I don't think, like, it clearly hasn't worked.
Yeah, and it probably wouldn't work for her.
Yeah.
And to be fair, it seems less like he's looking at her as a possible romantic partner and more like a partner in crime.
Yes, which is a little more similar to the relationship he has with Maria.
Yeah. Who, I'm going to point out, knows he's a demon.
Yes.
She had access to this. She's the one who put this book in the safety deposit box.
Yes.
So she is working with Archer knowing full well what his true nature is.
Who and what he is, yeah.
So therein lies the question, is she doing it with the intention of backstabbing him? Or is she doing it clear-eyed, knowing full well what he is because she's getting something out of it?
Yeah.
Hard to say.
I can't tell if she's trying in her own way because it's going to be really hard to hide anything from Archer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I can't tell if this is her own way of trying to help Dani without Archer finding out, in the hopes that Dani can do what no one else has done, which is take Archer down for once and for all. Or is she sacrificing Dani somehow to Archer to help him along?
Impossible to know at this point.
Right? I can see it going both ways if I fill in enough blanks on my own.
Well, here's a couple other little tidbits. Number one, I did look through the Lesser Key of Solomon to see if I could identify which specific demon Archer might be.
This is 100% something you would do.
I did not find one that fully matched his rough physical description and mannerisms. For example, the cane he's always walking around with.
Yes.
Or his specific power set. So he seems to maybe be a unique creation for this book.
Which makes sense.
I could be mistaken. I could just not have looked close enough. And I would have assumed Archer was an assumed name. Nobody's going to be walking around calling themselves Malthus or Beelzebub. That draws attention.
It does.
Number two, during her time visiting Archer, he gives her access to some forbidden tome of dark knowledge, in which it goes through some of the powers that people within her world are known to possess. And amongst those are powers that sound suspiciously similar to powers we've seen characters in the book have.
Mm-hmm.
Like a person who can locate an object, no matter how far away it might be. A person who can open any lock just by coaxing it to open. These sound similar to powers that we know people in the book have.
Yep.
And Anita posited
that maybe magical ability is hereditary.
And maybe certain powers crop back up in family lines.
Yeah.
And Dani's power seems very similar to Maeve's power.
It does.
Number one, Maeve was also immune to charms, which seems to be a byproduct of whatever Dani's abilities are. She also was not swayed by her mother's persuasive power.
Right.
Number two, Dani's ability to paint to enact her magic seems similar to Maeve's ability to paint to enact her magic. Now, Dani hasn't trapped anybody in a painting.
Well, I don't know that Dani's ever done a person's portrait before.
Also, she's probably never mixed her blood in with her paints before.
Probably not.
So it's possible Dani has the same power.
And doesn't know it?
And does not know it.
Maybe.
And the reason why I say that is because what has Dani suggested is the reason why her forgeries are so perfect. Because she captures the soul.
Yeah, she's
of
like
that
she
painting.
feels like she's channeling the soul of the work into her forgery. So if she were to do it right
and do it to a person,
maybe
it's possible she could capture that person in a painting.
I mean, maybe
like Maeve did. So it's very possible that this is the case. And this might also be why Archer's been involved with the family so long and encouraged Maria to have a child.
Yeah.
Because he might be trying to cultivate that same power back so that he could use it, so that he could free himself somehow. Who knows? Again, we don't know.
The wild speculation at this point.
Yeah.
But we finally have some answers, which means we can do even more speculation. So,
wild and irresponsible speculation.
As we are wont to do.
So with that said, I think that's kind of where we'll wrap up for this week. There's a lot to chew on, a lot to think about.
Yeah, there was a lot to take in with this chapter.
And a long chapter, so that's why this episode is also a little bit longer. But we'll cut it there so that we can take a week and think about things before we get into chapter 18, which you'll want to read up on in time for next week.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, of course, as always, you can give us a little rating and a review because that helps us out.
Oh, yes, please. We appreciate those.
You can also get a hold of us via social media.
Yeah. Pick your poison. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Goodreads. We are at the Read Along for most of them.
Correct. We also have an email address.
Oh, yes. Feel free to use that as well. You can reach us at thereadalong@gmail.com.
And with that said, as always, we love you very much, and we'll see you next time.
I wonder if there's more journal to read.
Thank you for joining us on The Read Along with your hosts, Anita and Scott Bourgeois. All Read Along music is by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com. Cover art is by Aaron Beaver. Be sure to join us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at The Read Along, and check out our group on Goodreads.com.